Peace be with you.
And also with you.
I wanted to start today's message with this word from Psalm 6, verse 3. How long, O Lord, how long? Because let's be honest, in this uncertain season called COVID-19, a lot of people are wondering, how long are we going to be in this situation? Well, I heard about this experiment that was done on some soldiers in the army to see how their mental state was doing and how they responded to certain tasks. So this divided into three groups, Group A, Group B, Group C. So Group A was told, okay, what you're going to do, get your stuff on, and you're going to run for 2 miles, and then we're going to talk to you and see how you're feeling, how you're doing. And so they got their rigging on, and two miles might be a lot for some of us with all that stuff on, but these are, Army folks, so they're tough. They got on their stuff, and they did this 2-mile run, and at the end, they were talked to, and like, yeah, it was fine. They were doing great. Their mental state was actually pretty good. They were given a clear job. They expended their energy, sat down, check mark, job well done, doing pretty good. The second group, Group B, was said, okay, what you need to do is you need to just start running, get your stuff on, start running, and just keep going until we tell you to stop. And so they knew that they had to conserve their energy, right? They didn't know how long they would have to run. So they got on, they started running. However, the time went on and on and on. And so, they had to conserve them. However, as time went on and as they didn't hear from everybody, they started to get more tired and more discouraged because they couldn't see the end. Well, the third group, Group C, they were told to also run 2 miles. Okay, you run 2 miles, so kind of like the first group. However, after they had run the 2 miles, they thought they were done, and someone came to them and said, actually, you know what, or sorry, could you run 2 more miles? Sorry, bit of a mistake, can you run 2 more miles? And so they had already expended all their energy, and so now they got to run more. And so they start to run, and then they sit down again, and someone comes and over them as if to talk to them and says, oh, sorry, I'm just looking at my files here. I made a mistake. Sorry, could you run another 2 miles? And so they don't have any more energy left. They've expended it all, right? Because they didn't know that they had to keep on running. And so they're really discouraged and more fatigued even more than the second group. So the reason I share that illustration today and the reason why I think it's helpful is because that's how a lot of people are feeling in this uncertain season. They are feeling tired and discouraged. Right, so like that second group, it's like, how long is this whole uncertain season going to go on? They don't really know. And that's discouraging, that's fatiguing in your life. Or some people feel like that troop in Group C, and they're running this thing, and maybe now that physical distancing limitations are maybe going to start to, change a little bit, or maybe as the economy starts to reopen, that, okay, things are changing a little bit, but they don't know the nature of that change. They hear something about a second wave of something, so they're worried they're going to be in this situation again, and so it's as if their progress forward feels somewhat stunted, and they too are tired and discouraged. Can you relate to that? Well, this message is specifically about how we approach these uncertain seasons wherein we might be feeling discouraged and particularly tired. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for God's wisdom to us, his stabilizing, dependable, trustworthy wisdom to us through the lens of one of the most famous passages from the Bible about changing seasons and uncertain seasons. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, for everything there is a season, a time for every matter under heaven. Because in these uncertain days, we need stabilizing, dependable, trustworthy wisdom. And so that's what we're going to look for. Now, I think it's going to help you specifically because we all need that certainty, stability, when so much is changing, when there's so much moving parts, so many moving parts in our lives. But the second reason I think this is particularly significant for today is because I think it offers a word of encouragement for mothers. And motherhood is particularly straining all the time anyway, but I think a lot of moms are feeling a particular strain at this time of year because of this uncertain season that we find ourselves in. So let's look to Ecclesiastes 3 for some stabilizing, dependable, enduring wisdom from God. So let's go through the text together. Ecclesiastes is a book of wisdom in the Old Testament. It is by the teacher, son of David, as he struggles to get wisdom for this short life, which is often filled with hardship. He seems to be writing to people who are skeptical and who question the meaning of their difficult lives and who wonder if life makes any sense. In verse 3, he asks, "What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun?" Here's the text, Ecclesiastes 3, 1-14, reading from the New International Version. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing.
Verse 5 says there is a time to refrain from embracing. Is it just me, or does that verse seem particularly new in an age of physical distancing? Verse 6, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Pause. The phrase a time to hate doesn't sit well with people because we are commanded by Jesus to love one another, Mark 12:31 and elsewhere. What might be in view in a passage like this is a kind of righteous anger, perhaps something like what we see with Jesus himself when he overturned the tables of the money changers in the temple in Matthew 21:12. Or we may think of hating sin or injustice. Consider Psalm 97 verse 10, which says, "Let those who love the Lord hate evil." Let's keep going with the passage. Verse 9. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from the beginning to end. Verse 11 says, everything is beautiful in its time. So the beauty affixed to things in this life are temporary. And at the same time, God has set eternity in the human heart, meaning that he has given humans an awareness of himself and of eternal things. We will never be totally satisfied in life if we avoid God. As Augustine said well over 1,600 years ago, the thought of you, God, stirs him so much that he cannot be content unless he praises you, because you made us for yourself and our hearts find no peace until they rest in you. Verse 12, I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live. Pause again. Now in verse 12, he says that there is nothing better than for people to be happy and to do good. But this isn't a final statement, since he's still working through what meaning there might be in life while on earth. He offers a more complete statement in verse 13 of chapter 12, where he says that the conclusion of the matter is this: fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. Verse 13, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him. And here remember that the word fear means to revere God. So it's a posture of awesome respect and honor. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
All right, so in light of that, what is some stabilizing, dependable, trustworthy wisdom from God in this uncertain season? Let's focus in on a few things. And the first might be just so obvious that we miss it, but it's this, that seasons come to an end. Think of a season. A season comes to an end. Verse 1, there is a time for everything, a season for every activity under the heavens, a season. Think of seasons for a second. They start, they occur, and then they come to an end. And the season, the difficult season called COVID-19 that we're in right now, will come to an end. You know, before too long, we're going to be able to stop refraining from embracing and embrace again, having visit with friends and family again. Workplace situations will be more stable than they are now. We're going to be going through these different things that we maybe took for granted before. We're going to be able to go to a park or celebrate school accomplishments or go to a concert and think, wow, this is so amazing. Seasons come to an end. This season will come to an end in its difficulty. Here's the second bit. There is meaning in the minutia. What does the text say? Verse 13, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil or all their work. This is the gift of God. So this is referring to the daily things we do, the eating, the drinking, the toiling, these kind of daily rigors of daily life, and these are to be perceived by us as a gift from God. There is meaning in the minutia. Why? Because it is for him and from him. It is a gift that we get to experience even when we're uncertain about tomorrow. And I want to just give a nod here to my wife, Laura. This is actually her phrase, and it's especially important to do this on Mother's Day. Meaning in the minutia is from her. Hi, sweetie. Thanks for that. So that's just so incredibly important, and it's a great way to say it. Thanks, Hon. And I think it's especially important when in a time when we don't know what tomorrow will hold. We're uncertain about tomorrow, because although we might not know all those things, we know about today. We have things to do today. We're not sure, what tomorrow might be, where we are going to be. Maybe it'll be a different career, maybe a different schooling situation, maybe different. We don't know, but we know about today. Taking care of a frantic household has meaning as a gift of God today. The work we do in an office workplace in a scenario that might be different than what we signed up for, that can be a gift that we receive from God today. Schoolwork is a gift that we can receive from God today. Housework, yard work, all these things. And sometimes we get down about these different tasks that we have. We see them as burdens and responsibilities, and I realize that there's a part of that, and I get that, and this isn't to say that we always enjoy them. However, we can perceive these daily rigors to have meaning because they are a gift from God, and other people might not even see or notice or appreciate what we do, but God sees, God notices, God perceives. He's the one who gives us these rigors on a daily basis. Michelangelo in the 1500s, world-renowned artist, sculptor, painter. One of his most famous works is, of course, the top of the Sistine Chapel at the Vatican. Here's a look at the top of the. Now, it's much bigger than this, but this just gives you a little bit of a portion, and right in the top center, there's the creation of Adam, as it is called. So this is like an incredible work of art. There's just so many details. If you've been there to the Vatican to see it, you will know that there's over 400 figures. There's over 9 scenes in his work of art on the top of the chapel, the Sistine Chapel of the Vatican. And a story comes to us that a friend of his came and saw Michelangelo while he's working on this, and noticed all the details that he was putting up way in the high corners. And remember, that was an age before zoom lenses. So, he's doing these details that then they thought no one's ever going to see these things. And a friend came and saw all the detail he was giving up in the high corners and says, no one's ever going to see that. Why are you putting all this detail into this work? No one's ever going to see it. And this is his response. He said, God will. God will see it. He realized that his work, his toil, even though it might not be recognized or appreciated by so many people, that God would see it. His work he considered to be a gift from God. God will see. Work in a frantic house, work in a changed workplace, schoolwork, yard work, housework, God sees. Number 3, we are summoned to seek the higher beauty of glorifying God day by day. The higher beauty. Verse 11, he has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Now, there's a couple things here. First of all the beauty in this world is temporary. It fades away. That's something that we learn in this passage. The second thing is that God has set the source of true beauty in our hearts, which is him, and an awareness of eternal things. It's like what Augustine said as we went through Ecclesiastes 3. We'll always be restless until we find our home and peace with God, the one who made us, the one who made us to long for him, right? And in verse 14, it says, I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it and nothing taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him or revere him. This is this posture of praising, of honoring, of worshiping God. Now, there's 2 implications that I want to tease out for here today. The first is that we are living in uncertain times, and although we might not know the why about what we are experiencing, we know what to do. Because the what we are supposed to do as God's people never changes. It's to glorify God. It's to glorify him. So we don't always know the why, but we know the what. And in this sense, what you're doing isn't always as important as who you're doing it for. And the things we do are for God. So that's significant. The second insight is this. It's that our world is so messed up around what is beautiful. So messed up. You know that Dove Real Beauty campaign? The Real Beauty campaign using real people as models, not just cookie cutter, whoever. Part of the reason that has become so successful and resonate with people is because we know that we are messed up around our ideas of beauty and what's attractive and what deserves our time and attention that resonates deep within us. Well, in Scripture, we are told about the most beautiful entity ever, and it is God. And so when we glorify God, we are being summoned to a high calling, and we are fixing our eyes on the most beautiful and incredible being entity there is, glorifying God. And this isn't just in 1 or 2 passages. This is a huge narrative thrust that goes through the entire Bible. A theologian, John Piper, says this. He says, in the Bible, I don't know of any truth that is more fundamentally pervasive than God's zeal to be glorified. God's zeal to be glorified. And regardless of the season and what we're doing, we can do that on a daily basis. Prayer, that's true beauty in this crazy, distracted world. Personal holiness, that's true beauty. Loving a neighbor, that's true beauty. Seeking justice for a friend, that's true beauty. Singing a sincere song of praise, that's true beauty. Seeking God's will, that's true beauty. I heard that the reason the Titanic sank wasn't because it hit an iceberg. Now, sure, it hit an iceberg, and that was obviously, what sunk the Titanic. But there's more to the story than that. In 2008, a journal article came out that highlighted the fact that at the time there had become, in the course of building the Titanic, a shortage of quality bolts. And so what happened is instead of searching further and wider for better quality bolts, they used these cheap rivets. And so what happened, and the rivets are what hold the steel plates together on the body of the Titanic. So when it hit the iceberg, these rivets popped the tops off, and down goes the Titanic. Well, friends, I'm here to tell us today that we are not being held together in this storm, in this uncertain season, by anything that is cheap or fake or inauthentic. We are being held together by the real deal. Lord God the Almighty, as he is made known to us in the person of Jesus Christ. That is the one who is holding us together. And it's interesting because in the book of Ecclesiastes, the writer, who's the teacher, son of David, as it says in chapter 1, is looking for wisdom for the difficulty of life. And of course, from our standpoint here in 2020, we know that wisdom himself has come to us in human form. That's Jesus. He's the one who gives us rest. He's the one who gives us strength to deal with the difficulty we face. He is the one who gives us guidance. He's the one who gives us love and truth and holiness. He is the one who gives us peace forever with God. He is the one who gives us that stabilizing, dependable, certain and trustworthy wisdom for the living of life. And through Ecclesiastes 3, here's what we've seen. There is a time for everything. Seasons come to an end, and this one will. There is meaning in the minutiae. Why? Because the toils and the trials and the hard work that we engage in on a daily basis can be considered as something that we will offer to God. We are summoned to seek the higher beauty of glorifying God day by day. Friends, trust in the good news that Christ is the righteous one for the rebellious, for us. He gives us peace with God. He gives us this strength. He gives us this hope, and he gives us the wisdom for living in uncertain days. Seasons come to an end. There is meaning in the minutiae. We are summoned to seek the higher beauty of glorifying God day by day. Thanks be to God through Christ our Savior. Amen.